Good afternoon, everyone. It is September 24th in the afternoon, in the year 2024. People have lost money. If you don't already know, Mana Crypt has been banned, Jeweled Lotus has been banned, Dockside is banned, and Nadu is banned. People have lost money. People are unhappy. People have lost faith in the market. People have lost faith in their cards. You're going to see a bounce, and then you're going to see it fluctuate downward again. So I wouldn't particularly purchase any cards that are potentially volatile. Um, and if you do have these cards right now, I would. I mean, you could try to sell them, but I doubt you will find many buyers that are willing to purchase them. Um, Obviously, they may have use aside from Jeweled Lotus and other formats, but um, more than likely you pretty much have a coaster for your drink at this point. So I would grab your Mana Crypt, put your drink on it, and just relax while everything tries to stabilize, I would say. Obviously, 4 cards have been essentially old yellered, and people are not going to think of any cards in the future as a potential investment at this point. I'm not sure if the loss of faith is going to set a downtrend for other cards in the market, and I am going to talk about that a little bit later. Um, but this is a pretty heavy blow. I do think it also confirms uh, that Wizards acknowledges that competitive EDH is a very real thing. I don't think people that were playing casual were really too concerned with these cards. I do feel like people that played casual used them, and I do think they pub stomped with these cards for sure. But I'm not entirely certain that um, they truly understand cEDH as a format. I do think that these bans were definitely targeted towards cEDH. I do understand the Dockside. I understand the Nadu. The Mana Crypt is very bizarre. The Jeweled Lotus is bizarre. Jeweled Lotus is a strong card, but it is the only card that does what it does for its format. You cannot use Jeweled Lotus in a singleton or a single player format and cast it and expect to get any value out of it because it only affects a commander. You can only use the mana for a commander. And the fact that it's been banned kind of just says that essentially nothing is off the table at this point. You'll notice that they say here, they say snowballing to a turn 6 to 8 win. These people do not play cEDH. Snowballing to a turn 6 to 8 win is what happens in mid range or low power EDH. These people do not play competitive. So while this ban did affect competitive, the reason that they were banned may not have been the reason that people think it is. And you have to understand that this rules committee is more of an outlet for what Wizards wants to do with the format rather than an actual group of people that play the format that are banning these cards. But it's not necessarily their fault. Um, this is just something that they do on behalf of Wizards so that Wizards doesn't have to deal with any of the backlash for the most part. Obviously, they probably sold these cards before they announced this. Is it insider trading at that point? Probably not. They probably just sold their own personal collection, which wouldn't have been more than a few hundred. But still, people have lost a lot of money on these. Some people with stores and their own personal collection, um, they've lost God knows how much, thousands. And obviously, that is not a good sign for um, people that want to have safe investments in the format known as cEDH. And as more cards get printed and more chase cards get printed, I'm going to bet the first thought on everyone's mind is how long does this card last before I lose my money? And like we can check right now at the value of Mana Crypt. 24 hours later, And I can assure you it's not going to, it's not going to look the way people would have expected it to look a few days ago when they were playing with it in the Discord on Spell Table. If we go over here to Mana Crypt, we'll see that cards that were once $200 are now like less than half the price. This has gone down to $500 from a market price of $838. If you owned one of these, you just lost $300 overnight. And I think people need to understand that if a card is deemed to reach a level of value that is too high, or financially speaking, or level of power that the rules committee ends up deeming to be something that isn't balanced properly, you will lose the value on that card. Wizards is not going to let you maintain a staple like this. And I would say the only good thing about this is it discourages scalpers from investing in the format. Everything else, though, is pretty much a net negative overall. And that does, make me want to bring to the attention of, PDH, Pauper Commander, which is another format. And if we go over here and we look at my Tashar deck, which I do own all the cards for, it has actually gone up in value very slightly. And it has not dropped even a single cent since these bans. None of these cards have been affected by it, because most of the value is in the reprint. These cards ultimately the majority of them will not be banned by the rules committee for PDH. There's nothing particularly broken about these cards. PDH does not suffer from a sort of power creep that cEDH has, because while cEDH has access to a larger variety of cards, PDH typically does not. And the value that we get out of our commons is not going to be something to the point where it's worth banning to any extent, especially not decks that don't particularly run a lot of tutors. I know people were talking about banning tutors, and I don't think that's necessary, really. I think right now the format is incredibly healthy. And if you're someone like me who put a lot of investments into PDH, you would actually see a growth in comparison to the people who have invested in cEDH. I think that's a very positive sign for the format. I think that is a huge green flag, and I think that may end up bringing people over to Pauper Commander as people try to recover or recuperate their losses from this ban over at cEDH territory. And it's rough for sure. I was fortunate. I did not. I owned proxies for the rocks, so I did not lose the value off of them. My dockside, funnily enough, did not arrive in the mail, so I was able to get a full refund for it, which is nice. And obviously, the people that have been playing cEDH, some of them are going to leave. Some of them may attempt to start their own Rule Zero or their own format. I've seen people try to do it in LFG already, where they try to Rule Zero or do a pre-ban. Most people, though, have accepted it, and they are not interested in doing a pre-ban version of Commander or cEDH. And the people that attempt to start their own format will find that majority of people are just going to go where the waves are, and they will end up being alone in their own format. I've seen it happen before, and it will happen again. And the reality of it is that what, and I'm sure this is a thought on everyone's mind, what is next on the list? Because something else will be banned. This is not the only one. I can assure you within the next year there's going to be another ban that is going to target blue and black, more than likely. This ban negatively impacted red decks, and it impacted any deck that benefited from Jewel Lotus pretty heavily. Nib Mizzet has pretty much been killed, which is a sad sight to see, but it's just the reality. That's just the harsh reality of the bans as they are right now. Nothing that we can do about them in particular. Um, Obviously, if investments are something that people are concerned about at this point, obviously I would suggest investing in PDH. Um, Whether obviously give the format a try, see if you like it, see if you enjoy it. If it's for you, it's for you. And if you enjoy having your investments in something that is incredibly stable, like commons, as you can see, have been incredibly stable. Um, you'll notice that it's a lot more freeing on your shoulders to not have to worry about whether or not your cards will be targeted for a ban. The only cards that have been banned by the rules committee have been Rhystic Study and Mystic Grimoire, which are understandable and reasonable bans. And when they were banned, most people had already owned the cards, and it wasn't an issue, really. And I feel like that as time goes on, we'll see more people in playing Pauper Commander, which can only be a net positive for the format. Um, I will say that those who do play cEDH, and I do as well, and I'm going to explain here in a second why I think that there is going to be more bans and what I think Wizards is going to do for the next cycle of their expansions. Because obviously, that's another big part of it is that Wizards wants to make as much money as possible. And they can't do that if every card they print gets outshined by cards that were printed 20 years ago. And so that is part of the reason why these cards were banned as well. They have other cards they want to bring in, and they realize that they can't sell those cards because Mana Crypt exists, because Jeweled Lotus exists, because Dockside exists, because any card they print after that will just seem like nothing in comparison. Like, why run this new card XYZ that Wizards has printed when I already have Dockside, when I already have Jeweled Lotus, when I already have Mana Crypt? I don't need the mana generating cards that Wizards just printed because I already have the best ones in the format. But what happens when those get banned? Then the new chase cards that get released, people are going to buy them and they're going to eat it up. They're going to bring it to their LGS or they're going to bring it to their casual pod, and that they're not even going to think twice about it. Like, oh, I just lost a few $100s because Wizards decided that it was time to balance the format randomly in the September of 2024. But it's whatever, because they'll just give me a new card that I can pay money for, right? And that's not how investments are supposed to work. That's not a viable way to look at it. Um, so I do think that people should be looking at Pauper Commander once again, even though I understand that it is the more fringe format. However, I think people that do um, attempt to play, see, that's a thumbs down right there. People that do attempt to play um, Pauper Commander will find that it is a much more enjoyable format than they would have thought, and it is not as slow as they would like to believe. Um, and the reality of it is that I um, that it's going to be a rough few weeks here while people recuperate. And I personally have a Magda deck. My Magda deck went from being a little over 1,000 to being around 700 now. Um, Thankfully, I had proxies, so I did not lose the money. But that just goes to show how my deck lost around a third of its value pretty much instantaneously from a single ban. So if you're not financially available to potentially lose a third of the investments on your cEDH deck, um, then you may want to rethink where your investments are going or to potentially use proxies. I think most of the community is fine with proxies, and I think that's going to be a more popular avenue going forward. I'm not sure how Wizards is going to combat that. aside from essentially saying that their sanctioned events are only going to allow for the actual cards. And people that are newer to the format are not going to have those cards. People that were playing EDH 20 years ago um, are going to not have too much of a problem putting together their $10,000, $12,000 deck. It's just not going to be a problem for them. Whereas for other people that are younger and newer to the format are not going to have that opportunity because of the lack of resources on their side. I do think Wizards should allow for people to rent the deck of their choosing at the event for a low price point and then return it once the event is over. I'm not sure if they will do that. I do think it would be a smart move on their part because the money that would normally be going to TCG Player or the secondary market would instead be going to them to rent their decks. Um, and I can only hope that Wizards does not completely destroy their reputation or destroy the overall market once again with another poorly set ban list within the next year. Um, I do think sanctioned events can be a good thing for the community and can make cEDH a much more um, known format or at least an accepted format. And yeah, I don't know what the future holds at this point. All I can do is essentially say that keep your investments where you believe it to be stable or where it's known to be stable, and just be careful to not buy anything too heavily right now while the market still resets itself, kind of. Um, Obviously, you do have to worry about the next level of powerful cards that are going to potentially be banned. Mana Crypts, or not Mana Crypt, Mana Vaults, Chrome Mox, and Mox Opal are the three next Mana Rocks on the list that one of them could potentially see a ban. So I would be careful in purchasing them and just be aware that you may lose your money. Other than that, um, enjoy the rest of your afternoon and um, yeah, just be careful.